This George Floyd case is very important to the white supremacists. This is one of the most important cases in the country now because, see, the murder of George Floyd was so bold and so brazen, and everybody saw it. So now, if they could justify that and get him off, it's a wrap. You understand? Or it's an awakening. See, I look at it from both sides. And the white supremacists are trying very hard to get Chapin off for killing George Floyd. If they can maneuver this case when you have all these experts getting on the stand saying this was just a killing, this was a cold-blooded killing, this was a strangulation, this was a homicide. I mean, this is not a drug overdose or anything. This is a homicide. This is a killing. This is a murder. Just back to back, everybody's saying this. Police getting on. Even police are saying this is not a part of our procedure. See, this is what the white supremacists want. They want the facts and the evidence to be stacked against them and still be able to get off. You understand? They still want to be able to get off with all of that evidence stacked against the white supremacists. This is all about making sure the I'm white and I say so rule is the law of the land, is the common law of the land. They understand how important this case is. And you better understand how important this George Floyd case is. Because what they're doing, they're hoping that there are some white supremacists on that jury who's on code. They hope that there are white supremacists on that jury that's on code.
Dad, why lawyers? Why the law?
Because the law, my boy, puts us into everything. It's the ultimate backstage pass. It's the new priesthood, baby. Did you know there are more students in law school than there are lawyers walking the earth? We're coming out! Guns blazing! The two of you, all of us, acquittal after acquittal after acquittal until the stench of it reaches so high and far into heaven, it chokes the whole fucking lot of them.
So one of the things that will often happen when there is what we would call sort of like a saturation coverage story, where with the verdicts yesterday in the Derek Chauvin case, basically every news channel was covering it live. Right-wing media essentially has no choice but to cover it. There's lots of stories that right-wing media will just ignore. But when you have like a saturation story, typically right-wing media has to cover it. And often that leads to completely unhinged meltdowns and lots of really funny things. So let's go through a few things that happened yesterday in the hours following the 3 guilty verdicts for Derek Chauvin in the killing of George Floyd. Here is Greg Gutfeld. I guess now he's a comedy host. I guess he's a comedian. I don't know. He has a comedy show now on Fox News. He seemed to almost completely become unglued when a Fox News guest called out Gutfeld for his comments on the verdict. Take a look at this.
Now, I got to tell you, I heard Greg a few minutes ago, and I got to tell you, I don't know, Greg is off his meds if he believes that there was not evidence.
Excuse
That's
me?
what I'm saying.
What did you say?
Let me finish.
What did you say? Excuse me? What did he say? Am I off my meds?
Not evidence.
You're lucky you're not around here.
Let me finish. If you do not believe that there was evidence that
I didn't
was
say that.
supported to support these charges, I got a bridge in Brooklyn to tell you.
Isn't that something? Just everybody losing their minds yesterday on right-wing media. Here is a Daily Wire host saying, and it's just so weird because these are supposedly the due process and law and order people. Here's a Daily Wire host saying the only verdict we could have trusted would be not guilty. Anything else is not trustworthy. What? Take a look.
Hours after the judge in the case reprimanded Maxine Waters, who flew from D.C. to the city before the jury had started deliberating to demand a guilty verdict. In fact, she demanded a verdict on premeditated murder, which she wasn't even charged with. And first of all, that whole Maxine Waters going to Minneapolis, what else could that be other than an attempt to intimidate and tamper with the jury? What other motivation could you have to fly as a high-ranking politician to the city where this local murder trial is happening and demand that the jury come to a verdict. Either you believe in fair trials or you don't. Either you want the jury to weigh the evidence and come to a decision or you don't. It's clear that they don't here. The problem, the irony is that the only verdict we could really trust is an acquittal on all counts. I think that would have been the right verdict, but it's also the only one you can trust because it's the only one that couldn't have been motivated by anything but a look at the evidence.
He says a look at the evidence could only lead to not guilty. This is like a no true Scotsman fallacy. Guilt, by definition, according to this guy, means the jury did not look at the evidence. What happened to these people? What happened to due process and respecting the process we have for jury selection and a judge deciding what evidence is admissible and is not? What happened? It's almost like they really never believed it. They just would go with it if it helped them. This next one's really good is Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, after the verdict, says, by the way, is there any evidence that this was a racial killing? And of course, what does that have to do with the charges? It has nothing to do with the charges. Take a look.
Well, both of those speeches were about how America is racist. Again, where is the racial component of
that's another?
Where is it? Like, has anyone yet provided the shred of evidence to suggest that it was a racial killing?
I wasn't even.
Do you know why? None. And then not only that, you have Joe Biden out there saying that America's police, all of our systems are actually systemically racist.
The guilty verdicts are for charges that do not mention race. They were based on the facts of the case. Here's one more Candace Owens clip. We looked at her appearance with Tucker earlier. Here's Candace Owens hanging out with the Daily Wire guys, pointing out that really this is about George Floyd being a drug addict. Take a look at this.
This is literal.
Right. Drug addict.
Yeah.
Okay, he was a drug addict. He abused women. He abused men. This is disgusting. That is. It actually grosses me out. Do we have no better examples to put forward in the black community when you think of the word justice? You think of George Floyd. I mean, how far we have fallen since Martin Luther King.
Just grasping at straws. They have no idea what to do with themselves. Going now from Fox News and Daily Wire to Newsmax. Here is a Newsmax host saying that the jury sacrificed Derek Chauvin to the mob.
Yeah, no, it's pressure on the scale, right? I mean, they say justice is blind. I don't think it was blind in this case at all. I think you had political pressure. I think you had pressure from all these activist groups going into all this. And I think at the end of the day, people say, you know what? If we acquit this guy, this city is going to burn to the ground. It is going to burn to the ground. So you had a jury that said, you know what? We're going to have to sacrifice this guy to the mob. And that's exactly what I think happened today.
This was not, according to this Newsmax host, jurors looking at the evidence and deciding guilty or not guilty. It was jurors sacrificing Derek Chauvin to the mob. Immediately after the guilty verdict, Newsmax host also saying it was not a fair trial.
What happens tonight, we don't know. I mean, obviously right now it's still light outside. There's a lot of security around there. You've got a group of people, I would assume that's some members of the family of Floyd, or friends of Floyd. They're celebrating. We don't know what this turns into as night falls. Again, sometimes there's no appeasing a mob in a situation like that. We have 3 guilty counts. The first thing that I thought of in my head was, and we talked a lot about this with Dershowitz, Alan Dershowitz. How on earth was he expecting to get a fair trial in this thing? There was a tremendous amount of pressure on that jury. I mean, you would have had to have been out of your mind to vote to acquit this man, knowing full well that everybody is going to figure out who you are, and you're going to have the likes of BLM and Antifa protesters coming after you with everything they got. If you're the one person that says, oh, no, I think he was innocent. I think George Floyd probably ate a pocket full of drugs when the cops came up to him. He had a bad heart. They put him on the ground. If he hadn't have done those things, he might have had a stiff neck the next day, but he died instead.
I like how it's totally peaceful, but he still has to say, well, it's light out right now. It'll probably get really dangerous when it's dark out. And of course, it didn't. And of course, the things that the host is proposing were debunked in the trial by medical experts. So, yes, it's pathetic. And it is unfortunate that so many people are already repeating these lines with absolutely no critical thinking applied whatsoever.
they depend on white supremacy. They want the system of white supremacy to be maintained. When you see brothers out here in the streets putting in work, people are not letting up on this Breonna Taylor thing. People are calling for the punishment of the race soldiers who did it. That's a blow to the white supremacists. They don't want us talking like that. We're very focused, guys. We're very focused on punishing these white supremacists. And if they understand if one white supremacist get punished, that means that's going to open the door for more of them to get punished. So he, as a white supremacist, he don't want that.
When justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous, but terror to evildoers. Am I only a God nearby, declares the Lord, and not a God far away? Who can hide in secret places so that I cannot see them, declares the Lord? Do not I fill heaven and earth, declares the Lord?